The space station Nexus Prime hung in the void like a gleaming jewel, its massive docking rings and habitat modules reflecting the light of the nearby star. Once a thriving hub of commerce at the edge of the galactic rim, it now served as neutral ground between two of the sector's most notorious criminal organizations, the Shadowbane Syndicate and the Void Star Cartel. Felix checked the seals on his combat suit one last time before stepping through the airlock. Despite its imposing bulk, the armor moved with him like a second skin, a necessity for a Deathworlder like himself, working in environments designed for species from lower gravity worlds. 8 years as a mercenary in the outer systems had taught him to never take chances, especially when stepping into a potential crossfire between rival factions. "Welcome to Nexus Prime, Mercenary Felix," said a tall, spindly alien with iridescent scales and 4 arms. "I am Administrator Quillen. Your reputation precedes you." Felix nodded curtly. "I understand there's a contract requiring mediation services." "Indeed." Quillen's inner eyelids flickered nervously. "The situation between Shadowbane and Void Star has deteriorated significantly. 8 months of shadow warfare has destabilized the entire Kepler Rim. Both crime queens have agreed to negotiations, but neither trusts station security to remain impartial." "And they trust me?" Felix raised an eyebrow. "They trust your indifference," Quillen replied. "Your record shows no prior dealings with either faction, and Deathworlders are known for their pragmatism when it comes to contracts." Felix studied the holographic station map that Quillen projected. The negotiation would take place in the Central Council chamber, with separate briefing rooms allocated to each faction. Security protocols, escape routes, weapon detection systems, all standard procedures for high-risk diplomatic engagements. "Payment terms?" Felix asked. "Half now, half upon successful mediation." Quillen transferred the credit authorization to Felix's secure comm. "The preliminary meetings begin in 6 hours. Until then, you have access to neutral quarters in Section 47. Felix nodded and turned to leave, but Quillen's voice stopped him. "Mercenary. Both matriarchs are bringing their own security details. The station has granted limited weapons permits to each. I suggest you prepare accordingly." Felix's lips curled into the ghost of a smile. "I'm always prepared. Administrator." The corridors of Nexus Prime were a study in calculated neutrality. Walls of brushed metal, interspersed with reinforced viewports that offered glimpses of the star-studded void beyond. Felix made his way through the habitat ring, noting the subtle security measures embedded in the architecture. Motion sensors disguised as lighting fixtures, weapon scanners integrated into door frames, and tactical choke points designed to contain potential conflicts. His assigned quarters were Spartan but functional, a small tribute to his reputation. Felix spent the first hour checking for surveillance devices, finding 3 and disabling 2, leaving 1 operational as a courtesy to his hosts. Then he unpacked his equipment, an assortment of specialized tools, emergency medical supplies, and a compact but powerful mass accelerator pistol that had been cleared through station security after much negotiation. A soft chime from the door interrupted his preparations. Felix activated the external camera and saw a stocky, 4-armed being with rough orange skin waiting outside. The visitor wore the insignia of station security, but carried himself with the alert wariness of someone accustomed to more violent professions. "Enter," Felix called, his hand resting casually near his sidearm. The door slid open, and the orange-skinned alien stepped inside, all 4 eyes scanning the room before settling on Felix. "Torvin," the alien introduced himself with a curt nod. "Head of Special Security Operations for Nexus Prime." "Felix, but you already knew that." Torvin's upper right arm moved subtly, and Felix reacted instantly. In one fluid motion, he closed the distance between them, twisted Torvin's arm behind his back, and pressed the alien against the wall. 3 security officers who had been waiting outside rushed in, weapons drawn, but froze when they saw their commander immobilized. "Impressive," Torvin said, his voice calm despite his awkward position. I was merely reaching for my identification, but your reaction time is noteworthy. Felix released him and stepped back, watching as the security officers slowly lowered their weapons. You'll have to forgive the intrusion, Torvin continued, straightening his uniform. But I needed to assess your capabilities firsthand. The situation we're facing is more volatile than Administrator Quillen may have implied. Explain, Felix said, his voice flat. Torvin dismissed his security team with a gesture before answering. 8 months ago, a Shadowbane transport was attacked while carrying what they claim was a legitimate shipment. 23 of their operatives died. Matriarch Kuran blamed Void Star and launched retaliatory strikes. Matriarch Valeth denied involvement, but responded in kind. And now they're willing to talk? Why? The conflict has escalated beyond their control. Smaller factions are taking advantage of the chaos. Shipping lanes are disrupted. Even peacekeeping operations is showing interest in the situation. Felix's eyes narrowed at the mention of Galactic peacekeepers. I thought this sector was outside their jurisdiction. Officially, yes. But Arcturus Vane, their regional coordinator, has been pushing for expanded authority. Torvin's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Tomorrow's meeting will be the first time Kuran and Valeth have been in the same room in nearly a decade. They've each requested a private briefing with you beforehand. When? Matriarch Kuran in 2 hours. Matriarch Valeth 2 hours after that. Torvin handed Felix a secure data chip. Dossiers on both leaders and their key lieutenants. I suggest you memorize them. After Torvin left, Felix activated the data chip and began reviewing its contents. The holographic display flickered to life, projecting detailed profiles of both crime queens and their organizations. Kuran of the Shadowbane Syndicate had built her empire from the remnants of a mining collective. Her species, the Tauric, were known for their dense musculature and aggressive territorial instincts. The file noted her preference for direct confrontation and swift, decisive action. Her organization controlled most of the resource extraction operations in the sector, along with the requisite protection rackets and smuggling networks. Valeth of the Void. Star Cartel presented a stark contrast. A Medusan with glistening obsidian skin and neural tendrils that constantly shifted like living smoke. She had transformed her inheritance of a modest information brokerage into the sector's dominant intelligence network. The Void Star specialized in blackmail, data theft, and targeted assassinations, maintaining a smaller but more specialized force than Shadowbane. Felix committed the information to memory, then destroyed the chip. He spent the remaining time calibrating his suit systems and reviewing the station's layout once more before heading to his first meeting. The Shadowbane delegation had been allocated a secure conference room in the station's administrative section. Felix approached the entrance, noting the 4 heavily armed guards positioned outside, all Taurics like their matriarch, their bodies covered in chitinous armor plates that served as both exoskeleton and natural protection. "Identify yourself," one of the guards growled, stepping forward with a hand on his weapon. "Felix, I'm expected." The guard's compound eyes narrowed as he scanned Felix with a handheld device. After a moment, he grunted and stepped aside, allowing Felix to pass. The conference room beyond was austere but spacious, dominated by a large circular table. Matriarch Kuran sat at the far end, flanked by 2 advisors. Her massive frame dwarfed the reinforced chair beneath her, her leathery skin covered in ritual scarification that denoted her rank and accomplishments. 4 arms rested on the table, each ending in 3-fingered hands adorned with jeweled gauntlets that doubled as close combat weapons. "The Deathworlder Mercenary," she said, her voice a rumbling bass that seemed to vibrate through the floor. "I've heard tales of your kind's resilience. They say it takes a plasma blast to the head to stop a human in full combat mode." "An exaggeration," Felix replied calmly. 2 plasma blasts, minimum. A sound like grinding stones emerged from Karan. Laughter. Felix realized. "I appreciate directness," she said. "So I will be direct with you. 8 months ago, one of my ships was attacked while transporting specialized equipment. 23 of my people died, including my blood sister." She tapped a control on the table, and a holographic display materialized, showing the wreckage of a transport vessel drifting in space. The attack bears all the hallmarks of Voidstar's operations: precision strikes to disable engines, targeted breaches to vent atmosphere from crew quarters, and the surgical removal of our cargo. "What was the cargo?" Felix asked. Karan's upper right hand clenched into a fist. "Prototype weapon systems acquired from a research facility in the Procyon sector. Nothing illegal, merely restricted. We had permits for transport." "And you're certain Voidstar was responsible?" "The evidence is conclusive." She gestured to one of her advisors, who transferred a data package to Felix's secure comm. "The Voidstar cartel has been attempting to expand into weapons trafficking for years. This was their opportunity to eliminate competition and secure valuable technology." Felix studied the information, noting the attack pattern analysis, debris composition, and energy signatures recorded during the incident. The evidence was compelling, but not definitive. "What are your terms for tomorrow's negotiation?" he asked, looking up from the data. "Reparations for the lives lost, return of our property or compensation at market value, and a formal acknowledgement of Voidstar's aggression, with binding assurances against future encroachment on our territories." Felix nodded. "And if these terms aren't met?" Karan's 4 eyes narrowed simultaneously. "Then this conflict will escalate beyond shadow warfare. I have already mobilized our combat fleets. If diplomacy fails, I will reduce Valith's operations to radioactive ash." The threat hung in the air, its weight almost tangible. Felix recognized it as more than mere posturing. The matriarch's controlled rage suggested she was entirely prepared to follow through. "I understand your position," Felix said carefully. "I'll convey your terms during the mediation." Karan studied him for a long moment before responding. "See that you do, Deathworlder. Your reputation suggests you value the completion of contracts above all else. Remember that when Valith attempts to sway you with her manipulations." 2 hours later, Felix stood before the entrance to the Voidstar delegation's assigned conference room. Unlike the heavily armed Shadowbane guards, the Voidstar security detail consisted of only 2 individuals: sleek, graceful beings with reflective skin that seemed to bend light around them, making their exact positions difficult to pinpoint. They made no move to stop or scan him, merely inclining their heads in acknowledgement as the door slid open. The conference room beyond bore little resemblance to the austere chamber where he had met Karan. The lighting was subdued, creating pools of shadow and light. The air was perfumed with subtle psychoactive compounds designed to induce calm and receptivity in most species, though Felix's suit automatically filtered them out. Matriarch Valith waited at the center of the room, her obsidian form seeming to absorb the surrounding light. The neural tendrils that served as both sensory organs and expression of thought for her species undulated slowly around her elongated head, suggesting curiosity and mild amusement. "Felix of Earth," she said, her voice melodic and precise. "I appreciate your punctuality." Unlike Karan, who had remained seated during their meeting, Valith glided forward to circle Felix, studying him from all angles. "Fascinating," she murmured. "The Deathworlder physiology, so compact, yet capable of such violence when necessary. Your species has always intrigued me." Felix remained still, allowing her inspection. "I'm here to discuss your position regarding tomorrow's negotiation." "Of course." Valith gestured to a seating arrangement nearby. "Please, make yourself comfortable." The chairs were designed for multiple species anatomies, adjusting automatically as Felix sat. Valith settled opposite him, her neural tendrils now moving in more complex patterns. I imagine Quran presented you with a rather one-sided account of our conflict, she said. About her transport ship, her lost cargo, her dead crew. All quite tragic, I'm sure. She provided evidence suggesting Void Star's involvement. No doubt. Valith's tendrils rippled, in what might have been amusement. Evidence that perfectly implicates us. Conveniently discovered despite the complete destruction of the vessel. How fortunate for her narrative. With a graceful gesture, Valith activated a holographic display between them. It showed the same destroyed transport that Quran had displayed, but from a different angle. What Quran failed to mention was the nature of her specialized equipment, Valith continued. It wasn't weapons technology as she claimed. It was advanced surveillance and data intrusion systems, designed specifically to penetrate Void Star's security protocols. The hologram shifted, zooming in on recovered fragments of technology amidst the debris. Our analysis confirms these components are consistent with Nexus 7 intelligence gathering systems, restricted even to most military operations. Quran intended to compromise our entire network. Felix studied the evidence, noting the detailed analysis reports and material composition scans. And the attack itself? Not our doing. Valith's tendrils curled tightly around her head, a sign of absolute conviction among her kind. We've been investigating the incident since it occurred. The attack methodology superficially resembles our tactics, but the execution lacks our precision. She transferred additional files to Felix's comm. Energy signatures from the attacking vessels match no known Void Star craft. The pattern suggests a third party deliberately mimicking our operational style. To what end? To provoke exactly what has occurred. Open conflict between our organizations. With us weakening each other through prolonged warfare, someone else stands to gain considerably. And your terms for tomorrow's negotiation? Felix asked. A mutual cessation of hostilities. Joint investigation into the true perpetrators of the attack. And Valith's neural tendrils stretched toward Felix, almost touching his face. Independent verification of Shadowbane's claims regarding their cargo. Felix considered her words carefully. Quran is convinced of your guilt. She is prepared to escalate to open warfare if her terms aren't met. Typical Tauric aggression, Valith said dismissively. Always reaching for the most violent solution. This is precisely why we need a neutral mediator such as yourself. Her tendrils shifted again, forming patterns that conveyed something like earnestness. I am prepared to offer concessions to prevent further bloodshed, resource-sharing agreements in disputed territories, even limited reparations as a gesture of goodwill, despite our innocence in this matter. And in return, Shadowbane withdraws their accusations and agrees to the joint investigation. We establish new boundaries that respect both our organization's interests. Valith leaned forward slightly. The alternative is mutual destruction. Felix, even if Quran's forces overwhelm ours initially, we have contingencies that would ensure neither of us survives the conflict. After the meeting with Valith concluded, Felix returned to his quarters to analyze the contradictory information. Both matriarchs had presented compelling evidence, yet neither account aligned completely with the other. The discrepancy regarding the nature of the cargo was particularly troubling. Weapon systems versus surveillance equipment. Felix established a secure connection to his ship's computer, transmitting the data from both factions for independent analysis. While the processing ran, he methodically disassembled and cleaned his sidearm, a ritual that helped him think. The terminal chimed an hour later, with preliminary results. The analysis confirmed Valith's claim about the cargo fragments. They were indeed components of advanced surveillance systems, not weapons. However, the attack patterns more closely matched historical Void Star operations than Valith had admitted. Computer, cross-reference all Shadowbane and Void Star operations in this sector for the past 18 months. Felix instructed. Flag any anomalies or deviations from established patterns. The display flickered as the computer compiled the requested information. a timeline materialized, showing dozens of incidents between the two factions. Most followed predictable patterns: Shadowbane's direct assaults versus Void Star's precision strikes. But starting approximately 10 months ago, subtle changes began appearing in both organizations' tactics. Shadowbane raids had become more calculated, less brute force. Void Star operations had grown more aggressive, causing higher collateral damage. It was as if each was gradually adopting aspects of the other's methodology, or as if someone was deliberately blurring the distinctions between them. Felix's attention was drawn to a series of incidents occurring just before the transport attack. 3 separate Void Star intelligence outposts had been compromised within a 2-week period. Similarly, 2 Shadowbane supply depots had been raided, using tactics consistent with Void Star operations. Computer, identify any third-party entities that would benefit from conflict between Shadowbane and Void Star. The list was longer than Felix had anticipated. 7 smaller criminal organizations, 2 corporate conglomerates with interests in the region, and the Galactic peacekeeping operations, specifically, the division under Arcturus Vane's authority. Felix's eyes narrowed at the last entry. Torvin had mentioned Vane's interest in expanding peacekeeping jurisdiction in the sector. A prolonged conflict between the 2 dominant criminal factions would provide ample justification for such expansion. A soft alert from his security system interrupted his analysis. Motion sensors detected movement in the corridor outside his quarters. 3 individuals approaching slowly. Felix shut down the terminal and moved to a position beside the door. Pistol drawn. The footsteps stopped outside. Then, silence. The attack came not through the door, but from the ventilation system. A canister clattered into the room, immediately releasing a dense cloud of paralytic gas. Felix's suit sealed automatically, filtering the air as he tracked the canister's trajectory back to its source. A panel in the ceiling burst open, and a lithe figure dropped into the room. The assassin wore adaptive camouflage and carried a vibroblade optimized for penetrating armor at close range. A second figure followed, this one armed with a neural disruptor tuned to human physiology. Felix fired twice in rapid succession. The first shot caught the leading assassin in the shoulder, spinning them into the wall. The second missed, as the second attacker rolled behind the room's sparse furniture. The door slid open, revealing a third assailant. Felix dropped to one knee, using the bed as cover while firing again. The third attacker jerked backward, but remained standing, protected by energy-dispersing body armor. Felix recognized the attack pattern. A pincer movement designed to overwhelm a single target with coordinated strikes from multiple angles. It was neither Shadowbane's direct approach nor Void Star's subtle elimination tactics. This was something else entirely. The injured attacker lunged forward despite their wound, vibroblade humming with kinetic energy. Felix parried with his armored forearm, the blade skittering across the reinforced plating. He countered with a swift strike to the assassin's throat, feeling something crack beneath his knuckles. The second attacker fired the neural disruptor. Felix's suit absorbed most of the energy, but enough penetrated to send a wave of pain through his nervous system. Gritting his teeth, he rolled forward and tackled the attacker, pinning them to the floor. The third assailant fired a plasma weapon, a serious escalation that risked station security involvement. The bolt seared past Felix's head, melting a portion of the wall behind him. Felix pulled the disruptor from his pinned opponent's grasp and fired it at the plasma-wielding attacker. The neural pulse struck true, sending the assailant into convulsions. With 2 attackers disabled, Felix turned his attention to the one beneath him. He tore away the assassin's face covering and found himself staring at unfamiliar features, avian in structure but with mammalian eyes. "Who sent you?" Felix demanded, pressing the barrel of his pistol against the attacker's temple. The assassin's beak clicked in what might have been laughter. "It doesn't matter. By tomorrow, both queens will be dead, and the sector will have a new order." Felix applied more pressure. "Specifics now." The peacekeepers are coming, the assassin hissed. Vayne will cleanse this sector of all criminal elements. Shadowbane, Void Star, all will fall. A shrill alarm began sounding throughout the station. The assassin's eyes widened in what appeared to be satisfaction. It's already beginning, they said. Too late to stop it now. Felix knocked the assassin unconscious with a precise blow, then secured all three attackers with restraints. He activated his comm, connecting to station security. Torvin, I need a security team at my quarters immediately. I have 3 assailants in custody. Torvin's voice came through, tense and distracted. Security teams are responding to multiple incidents across the station. Both delegations are reporting similar attacks. It's a coordinated strike, Felix said, checking the ammunition in his sidearm. Where are Kuran and Valeth now? Kuran's security fought off the attackers. She's retreated to her ship. Valeth's status is unknown. We lost contact with her delegation 5 minutes ago. Felix made a quick decision. Lock down the station. No ships depart until we sort this out. I'm heading to the Void Star conference room. Understood. Be advised. Station sensors are detecting multiple unidentified vessels approaching. They're not responding to hails. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Felix retrieved his emergency equipment pack, including additional ammunition and medical supplies, then headed for the door. Torvin, have your people secure these attackers for questioning, and check any recent communications between the station and peacekeeping operations. Peacekeeping? Why would they? Just do it, Felix interrupted. I'll explain later. The corridors of Nexus Prime had transformed from orderly passages to chaotic battlegrounds. Emergency lighting pulsed in a rhythmic red glow, casting long shadows that made every corner seem threatening. Station residents and visitors huddled in secured areas, while security personnel rushed to respond to the multiple breaches. Felix moved efficiently through the chaos, his combat training allowing him to avoid the worst of the congestion. Twice, he encountered more assassins, identifiable by their distinctive armor and tactics, engaging with station security. Both times, he intervened decisively, disabling the attackers before continuing toward the Void Star conference room. He arrived to find the entrance sealed by an emergency bulkhead. The 2 Void Star guards lay dead outside, their reflective skin dulled in death. Felix examined the bulkhead control panel and found it had been deliberately sabotaged. Computer, override bulkhead seal. Authorization Felix Gamma 73, he commanded, using the emergency credentials Quillen had provided. Override accepted, the station's AI responded. Warning, atmosphere compromised beyond bulkhead. Recommend suit pressurization. Felix sealed his helmet as the bulkhead slowly retracted. Beyond, the conference room was in shambles. A breach in the outer wall had vented most of the atmosphere into space, though emergency force fields had eventually contained the damage. Furniture floated weightlessly, some pieces bearing scorch marks from energy weapons. There was no sign of Valeth or her advisors. Felix activated his suit's enhanced sensors, scanning for life signs. Nothing registered initially, but as he moved deeper into the room, a faint biological signature appeared, coming from inside a concealed compartment beneath the floor. Matriarch Valeth? Felix called over his external speakers. The hidden panel slid aside, revealing a small emergency shelter. Valeth emerged, her obsidian skin marred by a deep gash across her torso. Her neural tendrils moved sluggishly, indicating injury or extreme stress. Felix, she acknowledged weakly. They came prepared for us. Targeted EMP disabled our defensive systems before the physical attack. My advisors did not survive. We need to move, Felix said, offering support as she struggled to maintain her balance. The entire station is under attack, and unidentified vessels are approaching. Not unidentified, Valeth corrected, her tendrils briefly forming a pattern that conveyed bitter certainty. They bear no markings, but they are peacekeeping operations vessels, Arcturus Vane's personal fleet. How can you be sure? Because 3 days ago, my operatives intercepted communications between Vane and operatives embedded in both our organizations. He's been manipulating us, Felix, orchestrating the conflict to justify a full peacekeeping intervention. A violent tremor shook the station, nearly knocking them off their feet. "They're docking," Valeth said, her voice strained. "We have perhaps 20 minutes before Vane's forces secure the primary sections." Felix made a quick calculation. "We need to reach Quran. If Vane is behind this, both your organizations need to know. Quran will never believe me without proof. Then, we get proof." Felix accessed the station's internal map through his suit interface. The central data core should have records of all communications through Nexus Prime. If Vane coordinated these attacks through station systems, there will be evidence. Valeth's tendrils twisted in a pattern of reluctant agreement. "The data core is in the central administrative section, between here and the docking bays where Quran's ship is secured. Can you move?" "I am damaged but functional," Valeth replied, straightening with visible effort. "My species prioritizes neural integrity over physical wholeness." Felix offered her a compact sidearm from his equipment. "Do you know how to use this?" Valeth took the weapon, her tendrils curling around it with surprising dexterity. "I prefer more subtle methods, but circumstances require adaptation." They left the devastated conference room, Felix taking point while Valeth moved behind him, her natural ability to blend with shadows making her nearly invisible in the emergency lighting. The corridors were increasingly deserted as they progressed, most civilians having retreated to designated shelter areas. "Station security should be responding more effectively," Felix noted as they encountered no resistance for several minutes. "Vane likely has agents among them," Valeth suggested. "Torvin may be compromised. Or overwhelmed. Either way, we proceed as if we're on our own." They reached a security checkpoint that separated the diplomatic section from the administrative core. The barrier was active, requiring authorization to pass. "My access codes won't work here," Valeth said. "This area is restricted to station personnel." Felix examined the control panel. "I could override it, but that would trigger an alert." "Allow me." Valeth moved forward, her neural tendrils extending toward the panel's interface. "My species evolved to interact with electrical systems, with sufficient concentration." Her tendrils made contact with the panel, twisting and pulsing as they interfaced directly with the circuitry. After several tense moments, the barrier deactivated. "Impressive," Felix commented. "A talent not widely advertised," Valeth replied, her tendrils retracting. "The less others know of our capabilities, the more advantage we maintain." They continued through the checkpoint, entering the administrative section. Here, the signs of conflict were more evident: scorch marks on walls, abandoned weapons, and occasionally, bodies of station personnel. "These weren't killed by assassins," Felix observed, kneeling beside one of the fallen. "The wound pattern is consistent with standard peacekeeping weaponry." "Vane is eliminating witnesses," Valeth said. "Everyone who could identify his forces." A distant explosion rocked the station, followed by the wail of breach alarms. "They're forcing entry through the secondary docking bays," Felix noted, checking the station status on his suit display. "We need to hurry." They increased their pace, encountering only minimal resistance, primarily automated security systems that Valeth was able to bypass with her neural interfaces. As they approached the central data core, however, they detected signs of a significant defensive position ahead. Felix signaled for a halt, then cautiously peered around a corner. A barricade had been established outside the data core entrance, manned by station security personnel and what appeared to be Shadowbane forces. "Quran's people," Felix observed. "Looks like she had the same idea about securing evidence." "She will shoot me on sight," Valeth noted. "Our approach requires caution." Felix considered their options. "Wait here. I'll make contact first." Before Valeth could object, Felix stepped out from cover, hands raised to show he wasn't an immediate threat. The reaction was immediate. Multiple weapons trained on his position. "I'm approaching under truce," he called out. "I need to speak with Matriarch Kuran." A massive figure rose from behind the barricade, Kuran herself, her 4 arms each holding a different weapon. "The Mercenary survives," she rumbled. "Have you come to honor your contract, or to die with the station?" "I've come with information," Felix replied, slowly lowering his hands. "And with Matriarch Valeth." Kuran's compound eyes narrowed. "Valeth lives? Bring her forward. Let me see my enemy's face before this station becomes her tomb." Felix glanced back toward Valeth's position. After a moment's hesitation, she emerged from the shadows, moving to stand beside him. "Kuran," she acknowledged, her neural tendrils forming patterns of formal greeting. "It seems we face a common threat." "Your assassins failed to kill me," Kuran snarled. "So now you attempt deception instead." "They weren't her assassins," Felix interjected. "Both your delegations were targeted simultaneously, by forces loyal to Arcturus Vane." Kuran's attention shifted to Felix. "The Peacekeeper? What evidence do you have of this claim?" "Valeth's operatives intercepted communications implicating Vane, and I've analyzed the attack patterns from both the transport incident and today's assaults. They don't match either of your organization's methods." "Convenient accusations," Kuran growled, but her weapons lowered slightly. "Why would a peacekeeping official orchestrate conflict between us?" "To justify intervention," Valeth explained. "Vane has been pushing to expand peacekeeping jurisdiction in this sector for years. With both our organizations engaged in open warfare, he could deploy his forces legally and seize control of our territories and resources in the process," Kuran added, the implications dawning on her. "Under the guise of restoring order." A nearby console chimed with an incoming transmission. One of Kuran's lieutenants activated it, and Administrator Quillen's face appeared, strained and bloodied. "Matriarch Kuran," Quillen said urgently. "Peacekeeping forces have breached multiple sections. They're moving toward the central core. Their commander is demanding your surrender." "Who commands them?" Felix asked, stepping into view of the transmission. Quillen's eyes widened slightly. "Felix, you're alive. The commander is Arcturus Vane himself. He claims both crime syndicates have violated galactic law and will be subject to immediate dissolution." "He's lying," Felix stated flatly. "Vane orchestrated the conflict between Shadowbane and Voidstar. He's responsible for the attack on Kuran's transport, and likely for today's assault as well." "That's a serious accusation," Quillen replied. "Do you have proof?" "It's in the data core you're currently defending," Felix said, turning to Kuran. "We need access to verify communications and tracking data from the past year." Kuran was silent for a moment, her compound eyes shifting between Felix and Valeth. Finally, she gestured to her guards. "Let them through, but watch the Medusan carefully." The barricade parted, allowing Felix and Valeth to approach the data core entrance. Inside, a vast chamber housed the station's central processing systems, crystalline structures interspersed with more conventional computing technology, all bathed in a cool blue light. "We need access to communications logs for the past 18 months, Felix explained to the lead technician, a nervous-looking being with translucent skin. "Specifically, anything involving peacekeeping operations or Arcturus Vane." "Those records are restricted," the technician protested weakly. Kuran loomed behind them. "Override the restrictions, or I will override you." The technician quickly complied, granting access to the requested systems. Felix and Valeth began sifting through the massive data repository, searching for evidence of Vane's manipulation. "Here," Valeth said, after several minutes, her neural tendrils interfacing directly with a data node. "Encrypted communications between Vane's personal channel and multiple unregistered receivers. The encryption is sophisticated, but..." Her tendrils pulsed with increased intensity. the neural connections processing the data at speeds no conventional interface could match. "I have it," she announced. "Vane has been coordinating with operatives in both our organizations. The attack on the transport was conducted by his agents, disguised as Void Star operatives." She transferred the decrypted data to the main display. Messages appeared, detailing Vane's instructions to his embedded agents. The evidence was damning: explicit orders to target Shadowbane's transport, followed by subsequent directives to escalate tensions between the factions. He even provided Shadowbane with falsified evidence implicating Void Star. Felix noted, examining a particular set of communications, and simultaneously fed Void Star intelligence, suggesting Shadowbane was planning major territorial expansion. Kuran's rage was palpable, her massive frame trembling with barely contained fury. 8 months of bloodshed, my blood sister's death, all engineered by this bureaucrat. "There's more," Valeth said, her tendrils moving rapidly as she continued to process data. "Vane has been systematically eliminating anyone who might expose his plan. 17 individuals connected to either of our organizations have been killed in accidents over the past year." Felix accessed another section of the data core. Station sensors recorded the approaching vessels. They're registered to a private security firm, but the command codes they're using are peacekeeping operations encryption. "Deniability," Kuran growled. If his plan failed, he could disavow knowledge of their actions. A violent tremor shook the station, stronger than previous impacts. Emergency alarms blared throughout the complex. "They're breaching the administrative section," Felix reported, checking station security feeds. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they reach this position." "We need to get this evidence out," Valeth said. "Transmit it to both our organizations." "Communications are being jammed," the station technician reported. "All outgoing signals are blocked." Kuran turned to Felix. "Your contract was to mediate our dispute. Consider it amended. Help us escape with this evidence, and your payment doubles." Felix nodded. "We'll need to reach the docking bays. Is your ship still secure?" "My crew reports the docking bay is under attack, but they're holding position," Kuran replied. "The ship's systems are active and ready for departure." "Then that's our exit strategy," Felix decided. "We download all evidence to portable storage and fight our way to Kuran's vessel." Valeth's tendrils formed a pattern of agreement. "I've already begun the transfer, but the path to the docking bay will be heavily contested." "Not necessarily," Felix said, studying the station schematics. "There's a maintenance tunnel network that runs parallel to the main corridors. It's more restrictive, but it should allow us to bypass the heaviest concentrations of Vane's forces." "My frame will not fit in such spaces," Kuran objected. "Not all of them," Felix acknowledged. "But I've identified a route that should accommodate you. It will be tight, but possible." The data transfer completed, and Valeth disconnected from the system, her tendrils curling back around her head. "I have everything we need. Comprehensive evidence of Vane's manipulation, the falsified documents he provided to both sides, and command logs from the attacking vessels." "Distribute copies," Felix instructed. "Everyone carries the evidence separately. If any of us don't make it, the others must ensure it reaches its destination." Once the data was distributed, they prepared to move out. Kuran's forces would create a diversion at the main barricade, drawing attention away from their actual escape route. Felix, Kuran, Valeth, and a small contingent of their most trusted lieutenants would take the maintenance tunnels toward the docking bay. "Remember," Felix cautioned, as they gathered at the maintenance access point, "our priority is reaching the ship with the evidence. Engage only when necessary, and keep moving at all costs." Kuran nodded grimly, checking her weapons one last time. "For 8 months, I have hunted the wrong enemy. Today, I correct that mistake." Valeth's tendrils formed a complex pattern that somehow conveyed both determination and a calculating ruthlessness. Vane will learn the cost of manipulating the Void Star. Felix led them into the dimly lit maintenance tunnel, his suit's enhanced vision compensating for the low light. The passage was cramped, barely wide enough for Karan's massive frame, and twisted through the station's infrastructure like a mechanical intestine. They had progressed perhaps halfway to their destination when station-wide communications suddenly activated. Arcturus Vane's voice echoed through the tunnels, calm and authoritative. "Attention all personnel and visitors of Nexus Prime. This is Regional Coordinator Vane of the Galactic Peacekeeping Operations. The station has been secured in response to illegal activities by the criminal organizations known as the Shadowbane Syndicate and Void Star Cartel." Felix signaled for the group to continue moving as the announcement continued. "Both organizations have engaged in prohibited weapons trafficking, resulting in significant loss of life and disruption to lawful commerce. As of this moment, all assets belonging to either organization are subject to immediate seizure." "He's consolidating his story," Valeth whispered, her tendrils twisting in agitation. "Creating the official narrative." "A narrative we're about to shatter," Felix replied. "Keep moving." They reached a junction where the maintenance tunnel intersected with a primary service corridor. Felix checked his tactical display, which showed Vane's forces concentrated in the adjacent main passage. "We need to cross quickly and quietly," he instructed. "Single file, 5-second intervals." One by one, they darted across the exposed section, keeping to the shadows as much as possible. Felix went first, securing the passage on the other side, followed by Valeth, whose natural ability to blend with darkness made her nearly invisible. Karan was halfway across when disaster struck. Her bulky frame brushed against a control panel, triggering proximity alarms. Instantly, security doors began closing throughout the section. "Run!" Felix shouted, abandoning stealth for speed. They sprinted through the narrowing gap of a descending bulkhead, Karan barely squeezing through before it sealed completely. Behind them, shouts of discovery echoed as Vane's forces responded to the alarm. "They've located us," Valeth reported. Her tendrils stretched back to sense pursuit. "Multiple teams converging on our position." The maintenance tunnel ended at a service elevator that would take them directly to the docking level. Felix overrode the safety protocols, forcing the doors open despite the system's protests. "Inside, quickly," he urged, as the sounds of pursuit grew louder. The elevator car was designed for equipment transport, not personnel, but it was large enough to accommodate all of them. Felix activated the emergency descent protocol, bypassing the standard stops and sending them plummeting toward the docking level at unsafe speeds. "Brace yourselves," he warned as the car accelerated beyond design parameters. The impact when they reached the docking level was jarring, the elevator's shock absorbers barely managing to prevent catastrophic damage. The doors opened to reveal a scene of chaos. Peacekeeping forces engaged in firefights with both station security and Shadowbane crew members defending their ship. "The docking bay is 200 meters ahead," Felix said, checking the tactical situation. "We'll need to push through the central conflict zone." Karan hefted her primary weapon, a massive kinetic accelerator designed for her species' strength. "I will create our path." "Wait," Felix cautioned. "Direct assault plays into Vane's hands. If you're killed in a firefight with peacekeepers, it validates his story." "What do you suggest?" Valeth asked, her tendrils forming patterns of rapid calculation. Felix pointed to a secondary maintenance hatch. "That leads to the environmental control systems for the docking bay. If we can access it, we can flood the area with suppression fog, designed to control fires, but it will also limit visibility." "Giving us cover to reach the ship," Karan concluded, nodding in approval. "Proceed." They moved to the maintenance hatch, which Valeth quickly bypassed with her neural interface. Beyond lay a compact control room, monitoring atmospheric conditions throughout the docking section. "Here," Felix said, indicating a specific control panel. "Activate Emergency Fire Protocol Theta-9. Valeth's tendrils connected with the system, overriding safety measures and triggering the suppression system. Almost immediately, Dense white fog began pouring into the docking bay through ceiling vents, rapidly obscuring visibility. Through the monitoring systems, they watched as confusion spread among Vane's forces. The Peacekeepers' tactics relied heavily on precision targeting and coordinated movements, both significantly hampered by the sudden loss of visual reference points. "Now we move," Felix said, leading them back to the main corridor. "Kuran, your people will recognize your biosignature even through the fog. Signal them to prepare for immediate departure." Kuran activated her comm unit, transmitting encoded instructions to her crew. Confirmation came seconds later. The ship was ready. They entered the docking bay, the thick fog reducing visibility to less than 2 meters. The sounds of combat had diminished, replaced by confused shouts and sporadic, undirected weapons fire. Felix led them through the chaos, his suit's sensors detecting and avoiding potential threats. They had nearly reached Kuran's ship when a figure materialized from the fog directly in their path. Tall and slender, with the immaculate uniform of a high-ranking peacekeeping official. Arcturus Vane stood before them, flanked by 4 heavily armed security officers. "Impressive resourcefulness," Vane commented, his voice as calm as in his announcement. "I expected no less from the infamous Deathworlder Mercenary, though your choice of allies is disappointing." "It's over, Vane," Felix replied, his weapon aimed at the Peacekeeper's chest. "We have evidence of your manipulation, communications, falsified reports, everything." "Evidence?" Vane's lips curved in a slight smile. "How unfortunate that all 3 of you died resisting lawful arrest. No one will ever see your alleged evidence." "It's already transmitted," Valeth lied smoothly, her tendrils forming patterns of absolute certainty. "Copies have been sent to every major information node in the sector." Vane's smile faltered slightly. "An obvious bluff. Communications are jammed." "Not all communications," Kuran rumbled. "My ship maintained a quantum-entangled link with our headquarters, undetectable and impossible to jam." Felix could see the calculation in Vane's eyes, weighing the possibility that they were telling the truth against the consequences of letting them escape. "Even if that were true," Vane said finally, "it changes nothing. The word of criminals against a respected peacekeeping official? The outcome is predetermined." "Perhaps," Felix acknowledged. "But we're not actually trying to convince the authorities. We're convincing the criminal underworld that you manipulated 2 of the sector's most powerful organizations into nearly destroying each other." "How long do you think you'll survive once that information spreads?" Valeth added, her tendrils forming patterns that somehow conveyed deadly promise. "Every operative, enforcer, and assassin in the Rim will be hunting you." Vane's composed facade cracked slightly. "You underestimate the protection my position affords me. A position you'll lose when your superiors discover your unauthorized operations," Felix countered. "The Peacekeeping Command doesn't tolerate rogue actions that could trigger sector-wide conflicts." A violent explosion shook the docking bay, causing everyone to momentarily lose balance. Felix seized the opportunity, firing a precisely aimed shot that struck the control panel on the wall behind Vane. Emergency lighting flickered, and the suppression fog intensified, further reducing visibility. "Now!" Felix shouted, launching himself at Vane's security detail. Chaos erupted as Kuran and Valeth engaged the remaining officers. Felix's enhanced strength and combat training gave him an immediate advantage in the close-quarters fighting, while Kuran's raw power and Valeth's neural attacks overwhelmed their opponents. Vane himself attempted to retreat, but Felix pursued, tackling the peacekeeper to the ground. They grappled briefly before Felix pinned him, pressing his sidearm against Vane's temple. "You've lost," Felix stated flatly. "Order your forces to stand down." "Kill me if you must," Vane replied, his voice tight with controlled fear. "But understand the consequences. Peacekeeping Command will send a full task force in response." They might, Felix acknowledged, if they believed you died in the line of duty. But the evidence we've gathered tells a different story, one of corruption and manipulation that led to hundreds of deaths. A rumbling laugh from behind them signaled Kuran's approach. Your career is over, Peacekeeper. Your legacy will be shame and failure. Valeth materialized from the fog, her tendrils forming patterns of cold satisfaction. The only question remaining is whether you leave this station alive. That decision isn't yours to make, came a new voice. Torvin emerged from the fog, bloodied but standing, with several station security officers behind him. Arcturus Vane, you are detained under station authority for acts of terrorism, conspiracy, and murder. Felix pulled Vane to his feet, maintaining a firm grip as Torvin's officers secured the Peacekeeper with restraints. Your timing is impeccable, Felix commented. I received your message about checking Vane's communications, Torvin explained. What I found was disturbing. When the attack began, I mobilized loyal security personnel to protect station residents while gathering additional evidence. Another explosion, more distant but still powerful, rocked the station. We need to leave, Kuran urged. This station's structural integrity is compromised. Agreed, Torvin said. We've begun evacuation procedures. Most civilians are already aboard emergency transports. What about Vane? Felix asked. Torvin's four eyes narrowed. He'll be transported to a secure facility to await trial, although given the extent of his crimes, I doubt any formal justice system will be adequate. Justice comes in many forms, Valeth observed, her tendrils forming patterns that suggested numerous unpleasant possibilities. They made their way to Kuran's ship, the docking clamps already disengaging in preparation for immediate departure. Around them, other vessels were similarly preparing to abandon the failing station. As they boarded, Felix looked back at Nexus Prime, once a symbol of neutral commerce, now a battleground of conflicting interests. Parts of the station were already venting atmosphere into space, emergency force fields failing under the strain of multiple breaches. A regrettable loss, Valeth commented, following his gaze, but perhaps necessary for what comes next. Kuran's ship detached from the docking bay moments later, thrusters firing at maximum capacity to create distance from the deteriorating station. From the observation deck, they watched as other vessels scattered in all directions, carrying survivors to safety. What does come next? Felix asked, as Nexus Prime receded into the distance. That depends, Kuran replied, her massive frame settling into a reinforced chair designed for her species. The conflict between our organizations was based on manipulation and lies. But the underlying tensions remain. True, Valeth acknowledged, her tendrils forming thoughtful patterns. Our interests often conflict. Competition for resources and territory is inevitable. Unless you find a better approach, Felix suggested. Vane nearly destroyed you both by turning you against each other. Together, you proved stronger than his schemes. Kuran's compound eyes shifted between Felix and Valeth. Are you proposing an alliance between Shadowbane and Void Star? I'm proposing you consider the benefits of coordination rather than conflict, Felix clarified. Your organizations have complementary strengths. Shadowbane's resource networks and Void Star's information systems could create something more resilient than either alone. Valeth's tendrils formed patterns, indicating careful consideration. The transition would be challenging. Both our organizations have deep-seated animosities. But not insurmountable, Kuran said slowly, especially with the right mediator. Her gaze fixed on Felix, who immediately understood the implication. My contract was for a single mediation, he reminded them. Consider it extended, Kuran rumbled. Indefinitely, with appropriate compensation. The Deathworlder who united the galaxy's most notorious crime syndicates. Valeth mused, her tendrils forming patterns that might have been amusement. Your reputation will become legendary. Felix contemplated the offer. His usual practice was to complete contracts and move on, avoiding entanglements that might compromise his independence. But this situation presented unique opportunities and challenges that intrigued the part of him that sought more than mere survival. "I'll stay until a framework for cooperation is established," he decided. "After that, we renegotiate." Both matriarchs indicated acceptance in their species' manner, Kuran with a formal hand gesture, Valeth with a complex neural pattern. The ship accelerated to faster-than-light travel, leaving behind the disintegrating remains of Nexus Prime. In its wake, news of Vane's manipulation spread rapidly through criminal networks across the sector, transmitted through Void Star's information channels and Shadowbane's operational contacts. 3 days later, representatives from 7 independent criminal organizations gathered at a secure asteroid facility, deep in contested space. Felix stood before them, flanked by Kuran and Valeth, as he presented the evidence of Vane's conspiracy. "Peacekeeping Operations has officially disavowed Vane's actions," Felix explained to the assembled leaders. "They claim he was acting without authorization, pursuing a personal agenda." "Convenient," remarked a reptilian crime lord, scales shifting color with skepticism. "They benefit from his actions but accept no responsibility." "Which is why we're proposing a coordinated response," Valeth said, her tendrils forming authoritative patterns. "Not retaliation. That would only justify further peacekeeping intervention, but a strategic realignment." Kuran activated a holographic display showing territorial boundaries throughout the sector. "The divisions between our organizations have made us vulnerable to manipulation. Vane exploited those divisions masterfully." "What exactly are you suggesting?" asked another leader. "A gelatinous entity, whose translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent communication signals." "A confederacy," Felix answered. "Independent operations with coordinated strategy, shared intelligence, defined territories, and mutual defense protocols." "And who would lead this confederacy?" demanded a third representative, eyeing Kuran and Valeth suspiciously. "A council, with representation proportional to territorial holdings," Valeth explained. "No single organization dominates." "And Vane?" asked the reptilian leader. "He still lives, still holds his position pending investigation." "Not for long," Felix assured them. "Phase 2 of our plan addresses that directly." He outlined the strategy: a coordinated strike against peacekeeping's regional communication relays, followed by the mass distribution of evidence implicating Vane to every news outlet, government official, and criminal organization in the sector. "The result will be Vane's immediate removal and likely prosecution," Felix concluded. "More importantly, it establishes that manipulating our organizations carries consequences too severe to risk." The discussion continued for hours, with each representative raising concerns and suggesting modifications to the proposed alliance. By the time agreement was reached, the structure had evolved into something more resilient and adaptable than Felix's initial concept, a testament to the criminal leader's experience in navigating complex power dynamics. 1 week later, the plan was executed with precision. Peacekeeping communication relays throughout the sector experienced simultaneous technical failures, creating a brief window during which Void Star's information specialists flooded all available channels with evidence of Vane's conspiracy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Peacekeeping Command, faced with irrefutable evidence and widespread public outrage, had no choice but to remove Vane from his position and initiate a formal investigation. Vane himself disappeared before he could be detained. Whether through escape or elimination remained unclear, though Valeth's satisfied neural patterns suggested the latter. More significant was the transformation of the criminal landscape. The newly formed Confederacy established clear protocols for resolving disputes, sharing intelligence, and coordinating activities to avoid attracting further peacekeeping attention. Felix found himself in the unexpected role of advisor to both Kuran and Valeth. who had emerged as the Confederacy's most influential leaders, despite their historical enmity. Their complementary approaches, Kuran's direct strength, and Valeth's subtle manipulation, created a balance that stabilized the entire structure. "You've exceeded the terms of your contract, Deathworlder," Kuran commented 6 months later, as they observed the construction of a new neutral station to replace Nexus Prime. "Few would have anticipated this outcome when you arrived to mediate our dispute." "Adaptation is survival," Felix replied simply, "for all of us." Valeth, whose neural tendrils now occasionally formed patterns that Felix had learned to interpret as genuine respect, added, "The Confederacy functions more effectively than any of us predicted. Even peacekeeping operations has adjusted their approach. More careful negotiation, less threatened intervention. Because they now understand the consequences of manipulation," Kuran rumbled with satisfaction. "Unity makes us stronger than they anticipated." Felix nodded, watching as construction drones assembled the station's primary docking ring. The new facility would serve as the Confederacy's central meeting point, neutral ground once again, but now protected by a coalition of interests, rather than hollow claims of impartiality. "What comes next for you, Felix?" Valeth asked, her tendrils forming patterns of genuine curiosity. "Your contracted term as advisor concluded last week, yet you remain." Felix considered the question. The past months had changed him in ways he hadn't anticipated. The Deathworlder mercenary who valued contracts above all else had discovered something unexpected in the aftermath of chaos, a purpose beyond mere survival. "I'll stay," he said finally. "At least until the station is operational. After that," he shrugged, a human gesture that both alien crime queens had learned to interpret. "Adaptation is survival." Kuran's massive hand came to rest briefly on Felix's shoulder, a gesture of surprising gentleness from the usually aggressive Taurik. "The Deathworlder finds his place among the stars." "Not just any place," Valeth corrected, her tendrils forming patterns of what might have been amusement. "The most dangerous, complex, and potentially rewarding position in the sector, between two crime queens and whatever chaos the galaxy throws at us next." Felix smiled slightly. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As the new station took shape before them, Felix reflected on the strange path that had led him here. A simple mediation contract had evolved into something far more significant, not just for him, but for the entire sector. The Deathworlder mercenary caught between alien crime queens had found not just temporary employment, but a role in reshaping the balance of power throughout the galactic rim. Whatever came next, it would certainly not be boring.